Welcome, Connor from Falling Tide Studios here with a quick beginner's guide tutorial in movement. So today we're going to have a look at the game engine of Unity, and just going to give any beginners out there and anyone just starting out a very brief overlook on two of the main types of movement. These aren't the only types, but there are different ways to do it, but this predominantly would get the job done to start off with. So first of all, we've just got a blank scene. There's nothing else except the camera and a circle. So all we're going to start by doing is putting our circle in. Now there's two ways to go about this. We're going to start by making a script. We're going to put it in a folder because it's a good habit to get into in terms of keeping everything organised. And we are going to call this movement translation. You don't have to, it's purely for frame of mind because we're going to be using two different scripts in this tutorial. So to start off with, we are going to very simply add a private float. Now for those of you who don't know what a float is, simply it's just a number with a decimal point. So you could set a float, we're going to call it speed, and you could set it to 0.5. However, if you wanted to do just whole numbers, you would do an integer, meaning whole number. That would not allow you to do a float, so it would only accept 3. You can't have the F either because the F stands for float. You only have to put the F if it's a decimal number. If you do a whole number as float, it won't be a problem, but it's a good habit to get into and it helps to define the difference between a float and an integer. That out of the way, we're going to leave our float of speed and we're going to say just a 3 for now. Now the simplest way to do it is purely to just move your game object with a simple line called transform.translate. Now transform.translate is not very open in terms of how to, in terms of movement, it's not the standard, shall we say. But we're just going to put it as vector2.right, and up here we're just going to simply put input get axis raw. So yeah, we're going to define actually a float, and we're going to put horizontal, and we're going to do one for vertical. Now, I'm sure all of you out there are very intelligent people. Horizontal is left to your right, so as if you're seeing a horizon, and your vertical is up and down. And we are just going to put in input get axis raw. Now get axis is Unity's built-in axis system, so it's already set up with A and D being left and right, AM and the arrow keys, the left and right arrow keys, and the WS being up and down. So we're just going to simply do that, and we're going to add the string name of horizontal. I always have to remember because I spelled it wrong. And the vertical is going to just be the same for get axis raw. Transform.translate, the very simple bit is it's going to effectively take in a vector 2 or a vector 3 if you're doing this in 3D, but I wouldn't recommend doing this method. But vector 3 simply, what we'll do vector 2 to make it easier, would take in an x, which would be the first number, and a y, which would be the second. So by saying vector2.right, all you're saying is 1 to the right. So a positive number. If you're going to the left, it would be a negative for the first digit. So we just need to do a vector2.right times speed, and then just to level it out, we'll go time.delta time, which will make it consistent with the frame rates. Okay, so I had actually made a boo-boo there. Instead of naming these their responsive codes, we shall name them Y and X. So horizontal, movement X, movement Y. Okay, so we're gonna also need a new vector 2, which we're going to assign movement X and movement Y, and that shall link up with all the directions in the thing, and that is pretty much it.
So if we go back over to our game here, we need to select our player or circle, apply the script, and simply start. Currently pressing the arrow keys and the ASD keys, WASD keys, and it's moving. We have it. The issue is, and there are workarounds with this, but we're not going to go massively into it today. But if we were to add a box collider 2D to this object, and we'll need to add a circle collider and a rigid body, which we'll get into in a minute as to why this, because would have helped if I didn't add that at runtime. So rigid body and a box collider, not what I meant to do, and a box collider, and then add a additional object with our square, which can move that over here, and box collider 2D. So the issue being is that with transform.translate, it's not as responsive to collision, and you can have some weird moments like this is kind of flipping inside, and it's not really, it's sort of bouncing off and it's throwing the circle into a complete different direction. As you can see on the rotation, it's now at -90, which means all the controls are now running backwards. So there are ways to fix this in terms of you can lock, constrain the rotations and the positions, but it's majority of the time just more simple to do it the other way. Now the other way is using the rigid body, which we just added. So we're going to put movement, rigid body, wait for that to compile, and start anew. Now with this one, we're going to need a few additional parts. So we're going to start with, we're going to need the speed as well again. So again, float and speed, and we're going to make that 5, and then we're going to add a private vector 2 movement, and that is going to be it for our variables. These are variables, by the way. Vector 2 just means x and y, again, just in case you missed that part. We're also going to need a rigid body component, which we should already have on our player. Which also reminds me, we forgot to add the rigid body 2D component. So I'll set the reference to it, so RB, and we will set equals get component, which will just run through all the components on the game object and find the rigid body, and then we will have a reference to our rigid body, which is perfect. So for next, we're going to put this in the update function again, just to make life simple, and we are just going to simply do our movements again. Movement.x equals input.get axis raw horizontal, and movement.y equals input.get axis raw vertical. Again, simply just getting the ASD keys, WASD keys, and the arrow keys so that we can actually move. So the next thing we're going to do is add in our actual moving, which is going to be rb.velocity, and we're going to pass through the direction, which will be our movement, because that'll be the arrow keys we're hitting, and we're just going to times it by the speed. Now if we jump back in, we're just going to need to switch out these two scripts, so we're going to remove that one and add in our rigid body script instead. And then when we start running into the block, it's still a bit jittery, but it's not as bad. It's still going to slightly rotate, and the simple fix for that is just to freeze the Z position. In a 2D game, 9 times out of 10 you won't need it, and if you are adding anything extra in terms of rolling around with the mouse, the player faces that direction, it'll be overridden by the rigid body. It just means that the physics won't rotate it. You can still manually rotate it in any script and everything. So again, it's because our collider's a little bit dodgy, but it will, as a whole, work as intended. If we were to switch this out and just make it a circle collider, which we'll do, just to explain how simple it is. And yeah, you can see it jitters and it does bang against it and then bounce back, but it does as a whole not actually cause any issues. It won't start jittering, I'm holding my button down and it just won't go. I keep hitting it. So at least to get you on the moving track, that's pretty much all there is to it. Translation or rigid body, either or, it depends what works best for your game. If you're going to have a lot of collisions and a lot of movement into buildings and things, I would recommend the rigid body approach, but the translation approach will also work if you have, say, something just continuously going back and forth across the screen, say like a pendulum or something like that, or an enemy that is chasing after the player and won't collide because if it touches you it'll get destroyed. Then the translation approach would be perfect. But other than that, guys, thank you for watching. I hope it's helped, and if you've got any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. Have a nice day, and if you feel like it, like and subscribe. Thank you very much.